Senator, I know Kash Patel faced your committee today. What do you think about the job that he's done in light of this assassination of Charlie Kirk?
I mean, I think overall, Cash Patel's done a good job. One of the things that we focused on early on during his confirmation was to get more law enforcement agents out of Washington and into the field. So in my hometown of St. Louis, we worked with Cash Patel and the FBI to get the largest infusion of permanent FBI agents per capita in the country. So I think he's very committed to taking on violent crime. You're seeing a lot of these interagency groups in cities as President Trump has provided real leadership, whether it's with the National Guard in DC or in Chicago. I mean, I think a commitment of the FBI of getting back in the business of taking on violent crime as opposed to what the previous administration was doing, which was going after Catholics and parents who show up to school board meetings and President Trump and all of that sort of nonsense. So I think he's moving in the right direction and shifting the focus of the FBI. So, but clearly they've got a lot of work to do when it comes to not just this most recent terrible example of political violence with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but I think, quite frankly, a very dangerous movement on the left as political violence has become more acceptable. I mean, I don't know another way to put it. You just look at the polling, 25% of very liberal citizens in our country believe it is acceptable to engage in political violence to achieve political means. Compare that to just 3% on very conservative. 3% is too many, but that's a big disparity. So something's happening right now with the ethos on the left, and it's not particularly new, but I think they've entered a new chapter, which the FBI will play a very important role in disrupting.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've been fighting this both sides-ism narrative that the media and the left are playing. And they want to sort of go tit for tat. There's an incident of violence on your side. There's an incident of violence on our side. But the point that you're making is important to understand. If one side believes that violence and frankly assassinating somebody is an acceptable outcome to your political differences, you don't, it's not equal on both sides. And when people talk about unity and taking the temperature down, I'm all for it. But I think there has to be an understanding about what the right has been up against. The idea that a force says you can't show up at a public place or a university or we will come after you violently is just not the same as the other side.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I look, I want nothing. I'm an American and I want nothing more than unity. However, in order to get there, we have to start telling truths and cutting through the mainstream media, who, by the way, has parroted all these ridiculous and inflammatory talking points for the better part of a decade now, of anybody you don't agree with is a Nazi and a fascist. And oh, by the way, inscribed on the bullet that took out Charlie Kirk was "Catch this fascist." So the reality is, when they call President Trump this existential threat to democracy, these crazed lunatics tried to kill him twice a year ago. So like, this isn't some like white paper where we're, opining about what might happen. It's happening. And this both sides ism is a convenient way, I think, for the left to dismiss the culpability that they have right now in what they're truly advocating for, that there's by any means necessary, you can achieve your political ends, including political violence. And a full quarter, like not an insignificant amount, one out of four believe that an assassination of a political opponent is okay. And that's not the same thing. That's not the same. So for me, it's free speech, yes. Political violence, no. But we have to start exposing the truth here, which is the nature of what's fueling this on the left.
You guys know I've talked about this forever. Sleep is at the corner of all wellness. And I've been using Beam Stream powder. Here we go. Look at this. Here we go. 3 empty bags of the cinnamon cocoa. And this is the brownie batter one that I've been using this week. But I'm crushing this stuff because Beam Stream powder is so essential to my routine now. I take a scoop every single night, put it in some water, 30 seconds in the microwave. I love this stuff. Some people tell me they love it with milk. That's your call, not mine. Maybe you don't even want to heat it up. When I travel, I just put it in the cup and mix it because it's an amazing tasting drink on its own, but it's got all these natural, reishi, apigenin, L-theanine, melatonin, magnesium, all natural. You fall asleep real quick, you stay asleep, and you wake up rip roaring ready to go. That's what I love about the stuff. So go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer at 40% off your order. Shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer for 40% off. And so that's the when everyone says to me, we need to take the temperature down in unity, I'm with you on this. This idea of truths, like if you're willing to understand that there is a difference, then I want to have that discussion. But I guess the existential question I'm dealing with right now is, how do we get there? Because when I bring it up, exactly what you said, and frankly, I thought it was more worse than you described. But regardless, it's still more on their side. I don't have an answer, to be blunt with you. You've been an attorney general. You've dealt with, like, what is the way? Like, how do we move forward if one side won't accept those truths that you're speaking of? Then how do we move forward? Because I feel like you're right. The media excuses it and says, "Well, you guys did it too, so it's the same."
Yeah, I think probably art to be able to articulate the arc of the story here is an important challenge, I think, now, because when you have somebody like Bill Ayers, who was part of the Weather Underground in the 60s, firebombing and engaged in that kind of violence, it becomes a close advisor to Barack Obama, the most divisive president in my view, in modern American history. We really saw the beginning of this kind of radical racialization of everything. And then in 2016, the response to that was the American people were rejecting it, was Hillary Clinton saying, the basket of deplorables. And then you saw an apparatus within the government, including the FBI, trying to spy on Trump and discredit Trump. And then he's the threat to democracy. And then they engage in what they engage in 2020 to try to get him out of office. And now when he tries to come back, this is, it's a scary time for the country. And the only way we're going to overcome that, I think, is to continue to talk about what America is about, this belief that we have to hold on to, that you can have real disagreements, but those disagreements are settled in the town square and at the ballot box, and that we reject any form of political violence. But let's not be naive. The left doesn't actually believe that. If you're looking at polling, and you're looking at all of these incidents that have happened now, even the ones where, the folks on the other side will say, well, what about this person? What about Josh Shapiro? Well, the truth is that was a Free Palestine radical. So yes, he's a Democrat governor, but you look at the perpetrators here. It's not a both sides thing right now. And the media is going to try to shut that debate down because it's very uncomfortable for them. And it's very uncomfortable for my Democrat colleagues. But I think we have to be courageous in telling the truth. And that's the way we win the argument here, is that most Americans who witnessed that horrific event last Wednesday, where perhaps a generational talent of somebody who went into the institutions that have been captured, higher ed, by this leftist ideology, he went there and he had a microphone and he gave a microphone to somebody else and he debated it. And they were frustrated the fact that this guy was helping turn the tide among young voters. And in a literally like a Greek tragedy, as he's holding a microphone, an assassin shoots him in the throat, taking away his voice and his life. And we can't forget that. So I think we just have to be committed to continuing Charlie Kirk's work. And I do think I will tell you, it was very difficult for me to try to explain this to my kids. I have a son and two teenage daughters, and trying to talk to them about this. But there is a younger generation, I think, that's seeing all this and they're internalizing it. And hopefully something can come out of this, which is everybody's committed to America, and we're unafraid to call out the excesses and radicalism of the left.
I was at an event last night, and Bobby Kennedy was there, and Oz was there, and we were having a Maha discussion. And I know this sounds sick and perverse, but the entire time I was sitting around doing like a security threat analysis. Like, I'm like, this is scary. Like, I mean, right? There was no, and I don't want to get into the details of the event because I don't want to get anyone ideas. That's scary. you've been a state attorney general. You're now a United States senator. You're talking about the conversations that you have with your kids. Have you? I mean, I say this like in the like, are you having these thoughts and concerns and discussions about like your own personal security?
I mean, we're all human beings, you know,
Right, but that's
and
exactly
I've
the
certainly been, whether the previous job or my job, I don't shy away from difficult topics, but I don't think I don't think that's how you can live your life. Not if you're committed to the country, and that's where I sort of land on it. But this is what terrorism is, you know. You just think about these events that have happened, and you know that assassination. Uh, the result can't be that we retreat. You know, that can't be the result from it. I don't think that's what Charlie Kirk would have wanted.
no, no.
Um, you know,
But you have a book out right now that's doing very well, by the way, endorsed by J.D. Vance and Don Jr. and the president said great things. And when you wrote the book, you obviously, based on your background, focused on how to beat the left in court. Knowing what we know now in the last 72, 96 hours, whatever it's been, is that where the real fight still is? The more that you've had a time to reflect, is this like where when we talk about this existential struggle for the heart and soul of where we need to go, is it the courts? Is it the Soros funded prosecutors and like I know that you guys had in St. Louis?
mm-hmm.
Is it where is it? What do we need to do? How do we step up and honor that legacy of Charlie?
Yeah, that's why why I wrote the book, The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court, because that was my experience as Attorney General in a crazy wild time where I saw, and I've taken that to this job. One of the great, it was crazy when it was happening, but I saw the full landscape of what the left was doing and capable of, whether it was the lockdown strategy using COVID, forcing vaccine mandates, people would lose their job if they didn't comply. The censorship enterprise we saw under Joe Biden, the DEI struggle sessions, and the ESG indoctrination of our kids. This is all part of their effort to undermine our country, the West. They don't believe in the same things that we believe in. So we better win, and we better fight on every front. And the front that I was fighting on until the cavalry could arrive was in the courts. And the cavalry was President Trump and this movement, the Maha movement, the MAGA movement. That is a real thing. But I do think as it relates to what has happened in the last week, it's also an appreciation for that this is, a struggle for America and whether or not this experiment's going to survive. And at the core of all of it, Sean, is the ability to speak your mind without being killed for it, you know, and that we got to hold on to that. If you know this country was founded on that kind of principle, and people have fought and died for all of those things over the last 250 years. So anyway, I think that the book was the release was a few weeks ago, but there's certainly a lot of in light of everything that's happened, there's certainly a lot of insight, I think, of to the all the fronts that we're fighting, and Charlie Kirk. I think about him, the censorship fight that we had in Missouri versus Biden. I mean, Charlie Kirk lived that. He was the embodiment of fearlessness, of willing to go in and have tough conversations and try to persuade. And we have to keep doing that.
Last thing I want to ask you is, the assassin that killed Charlie is in court today. You've been an attorney general. What's the play? Is in other words, if you're the attorney general in Utah right now, I had Will Chamberlain from the Article 3 Project on yesterday, and he said getting to aggravated murder, which is the threshold for the death penalty, might be challenging because there's different wickets that you have to hit to meet that, to prove that that individual was an elected official or a law enforcement, et cetera. Should the attorney general say, I've got you dead to rights, I've got the DNA, I've got your chats, I've got the confessions that you made to your parents and relatives, and I'm doing this, or should they cut a deal at some point and say, as long as we can put you away for the rest of your life so that he doesn't plead insanity or something? What just put us inside the mind of somebody like you who had been an attorney general. What do you want right now?
Well, I think right now in this initial stage, you want to charge that's sort of rock solid, and then you can continue the investigation. I mean, the investigation's really only a few days old. I don't really know what they have or who he's talked to or if there's a network that's part. I mean, I don't know any of those things, and maybe all those things are true. Maybe none of those things are true. But I think they're going to have time to explore all those avenues, including, if there's an aggravated element to it that rises to the level of the death penalty. They still have time to amend the charges, and that's probably what they'll do. I've not really seen what the initial charges are. It's hard. The federal prosecutors have on murder cases have more limited jurisdiction. They're typically on murder cases state charges, but my guess is no matter who's involved, they're going to get something that they've got rock solid evidence for right now and continue their investigation and maybe amend later.
Senator Eric Schmitt, thank you for joining us. Congrats on the new book, and continue to fight the fight that you're doing every day. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.
You bet.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.